Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliette Clark, and I'm really excited about today's guest. Sage Polaris, one of my buddies from the Dames, is going to be talking about 4 buyer types. So digging deep into helping you understand your buyer, which we do all of this work to market ourselves. But when we actually go to sell products and services, we have to understand what motivates our buyers to buy. And I think we've seen a lot in the news lately about companies that have tried something new that necessarily doesn't hit their target market and how drastically that can backfire with your sales. So I'm really excited about that. Before we get started, I want you to go check out my new book, The Author Success Handbook. I'm really excited about sharing this with all of you guys because it actually is the key to building an author platform the right way. And buyers, understanding your buyers is part of that. You'll see a section in the book that talks a little bit about that and recommends another book. So a little bit about Sage. Sage Polaris has written high converting copy for more than 475 clients, earning them millions of dollars. She helps personal brands and service providers sell more of their service or offer with the words on their website. Her email sales pages are responsible for generating as much as 7 figures in a single launch. She's worked with Charlene Johnson, Chrisette Michelle, Rick Mulready, and Lynn Twist. Basically, she makes money for the internet famous people that we all look up to. And in turn, she's also been an international speaker in exclusive private masterminds. She can show your audience how to go from storytelling to story selling. This is what truly makes a brand legendary. So stay tuned. Sage is next. Sage, welcome. I'm really excited to talk to you today. My people need you so badly.
I appreciate you having me and opening up your circle, Juliette.
Well, thank you. I told everybody in the intro, you're part of the Dames that, is such a great group that many of us that are on the show belong to. So I'm really excited that you've joined us as part of that. So for those of you who are tuning in and listening, Sage is going to talk about the 4 buyer types today. And when you guys have gone through my new book, The Author Success Handbook, and for those of you who've gone through Author Traffic School, you know that we start with building your author avatar, which is all those demographics, psychographics, media, we're doing market research. But then what Sage is going to talk about today is so important because you need to know what motivates your people to buy. It's one thing to build that avatar and say, those are my people, but it's quite another to sell to those people. And, Sage and I agreed we'd talk a little bit about the disasters we'd see going on in the marketplace right now with a couple big visible companies that have not honored their target market. So I guess the first one would be Bud Light. Last I looked, I think 29 billion in sales they've lost because they did. I know, is that incredible? They're actually laying off people because they did something that offended their target market. They tried something new. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously these mistakes can cost you big money.
Yeah, you have to be aware of your values and also the values of your audience and make sure there's not a misalignment there. So if you're going to say something that will offend them, then you need to also know how to manage that on the back end and how to genuinely apologize to your audience and genuinely do better because they're going to watch, they're going to pay attention, not forever. And I'm just being honest here. At some point, I think they will bounce back from this just because of the size of their reach. Like they'll be able to figure it out. It's interesting. Like I've seen this happen to a lot of brands. They're not the first brand to misstep. And so I just want everyone here to first of all, when you have a smaller audience, it's okay to have these missteps because you'll be able to recover quickly and more easily. Versus when you have a huge audience like this and the spotlight's on you, they have crisis management people who come in and help them fix this problem, right? And over time, they'll be able to recover. But I'm sorry to hear about those layoffs. That's devastating. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind as you grow your brand and you get a bigger audience is that the choices you make don't just impact you, right? Like the choices you make impact more than just a few people and you. And so just being conscious of that and creating a business that's aligned around your values and not straying away from that. People respect and admire so much. And it's not that we don't ever make mistakes. I've certainly made mistakes in my business. But how you take action on those mistakes after you apologize is what really people are watching.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there were some big mistakes there. They've never apologized to their core audience, and they put together some sort of patronizing ads that it's like, yeah, that's not enough. So I wanted to lead in with that because yes, you're right. The small businesses, it's not so devastating. You don't have the news media talking about it all the time like you do with others, but you do have to really know what motivates those people to buy and, not offend them in some way. And yeah, it's so easy. People are so easily offended these days. It's hard with everything.
Yeah. And there's a fine line, right? Like, we're going to talk about these 4 buyer types. Maybe I should get into it because it kind of relates directly to what we're talking about. So I like looking at this through the filter of The Simpsons, which is a TV show. I think it's the longest running TV show that I know of. It's been going for multiple decades now. And when I saw those characters and the relatability of them, that show is also not perfect. There are things that are problematic, but that's another conversation for another day. But there's 4 main characters on there. And to me, when I saw that, I was like, oh, they represent the relatability of this show for sure. But also the way they make decisions relates to how people make buying decisions in the market. And so I kind of bridged that gap of those two. And so the 4 characters, I was thinking of Homer. So there's these 4 buyer types, and he represents the fun-loving decision maker. So when he's reading your copy or your marketing materials, he's looking to see if you're fun. And so an example on my website on sagepolaris.com is when you go on the homepage, I swear to you, so many people have said this to me. There's a picture of me with a pen balanced on my nose. And I have people be like, that's why I hired you, because I could tell you were fun. And they're the Homers of the world. Like they're the fun loving decision maker. They're like, oh, she looks like a party. I want to play with her. Right. Like it wasn't the only decision. There were other things, and I'll get into the other 3 characters, but that stood out to them. And then literally I'll get on like a private client call, and like their husband will come into the background of the Zoom, and they're like balancing a pin on their nose. And it takes me a minute to get it. I'm like, what are they? Oh, right. Yes. I can totally do it. Like it's a skill, right?
Okay. Just doesn't work. I guess I'm not hireable.
But I mean, it lights you up, right? Like it makes it feel fun and playful, and that's the point of it. And so your words matter, right? Like in terms of copywriting, not the legal kind, the marketing term. That's what I help my clients with. But also having fun and funny images or puns or music lyrics or GIFs in your emails, or when you're writing your sales page or whatever it is you're working on. It attracts that particular buyer type, that fun-loving decision maker. So that's something like right away you could implement, but it's a fine line. Like going back to what we were talking about earlier, like being fun and funny sometimes can cross a boundary for people where they're like, that's not funny to me anymore. That's something else. That's hate speech. That's whatever. Like, so understanding your audience and what kind of humor they get and enjoy is another thing to consider when you're writing your copy. And there's just that like fine line you got to dance about what you're willing to say and how you're going to portray your business. The only thing I would say, like, be mindful of is that a lot of people come from the corporate space, and humor is like things are pretty buttoned up in the corporate space. So people think they can't show their personality if they're coming from that space, and then they have a personal brand, like they're an author, right? And they want to get to know who you are as a person. And instead you're like only wanting to do corporate speak where it's very formal and buttoned up, and like there's no room to do that funny, fun loving stuff. But actually, like when you have a personal brand, those people want to know that part of your personality. They want to know like what's humorous to you. So those are some things to keep in mind. And do you at all identify with being like a fun loving decision maker, Juliet? Because I got 3 others for you if you don't identify with it.
I guess. Okay, it depends on the day.
I love that.
Day, too fun loving. But yeah, I'm the decision maker, sort of the boss, and I make decisions quickly. I think that is one of the things with the fun loving is, would you agree with that? That those are people who they see it, they know what they want, and they do it.
No, that's actually a separate buyer type. So let's get into it. I'm so glad you said that. It's like perfect segue. So the fun-loving decision makers actually like to be wooed a little bit. Like they are the ones who are a bit last minute. They're always late to the party, but you're so glad they're there because they're such a good time. So for them, like when I'm doing an email campaign for a client, let's say, we'll do like up to 20 emails. And the fun-loving decision makers are like, I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'm buying today on the very last day of the offer before it closes, right? The things to keep in mind, though, about these 4 buyer types as I go through them is like we all have all 4 in us. You're right. It depends not always on the day, but more so. And some day, some days you are feeling more silly for sure, but it more so depends like on the price point, how aware they are of the problem. There's like other factors that go into how they make that buying decision. So that fast decision maker. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I stop that for a minute? I love that word you just used, awareness, because so many people I see out there, they probably come to you and they say, oh, I want this bomb campaign, but nobody knows who they are. So they really need that awareness piece first. So I'm glad you said that, because that is really, a great campaign is not going to do you any good if nobody knows you're alive.
Yeah, you have to build up it's kind of like brand equity with people, right? Like for them, and there's ways, even if you're brand new on the market, to get people quickly familiar with you and build that brand equity quickly. And every business is a little bit different in terms of like, what are their assets that can make them feel instantly connected to their audience, even if they're brand new to the game. There's certain things that might be available to them. I'll give you a quick example. So one of my clients is Lynn Twist from Soul of Money. And when we first started working together, she had really established herself on speaking on stages. And so she was really well known in that circuit. And she's been doing her work for 4 decades. So she has the experience and the expertise and all of these things. But in the online space, people hadn't really seen her around, right? Like she had mostly focused on in-person spaces to sell. So when she came to me, and we worked together for about 3 years and developed about 5 or 6 products, digital products now for her. But that's a perfect example of an author who came to me and didn't know how to build those relationships in the online space that she had built so well somewhere else. And so what we did was, she had been on Oprah. She had testimonials from Jane Goodall, like the Jane Goodall. And so we put that in key places in her campaign so that when someone brand new to her saw her name and what she had to offer, let's say a free event that we were promoting, we would put a testimonial of Jane Goodall right below that, right below the opt-in button. And so people would instantly feel connected to her because they're connected to Jane, right? So there's ways to build that connection. And it doesn't have to take a long time for them to recognize her as a brand, to having that brand equity and being like, oh, actually, I want to know her work because I love Jane and now I want to know her. So those are ways that I help folks build bridges. But what's interesting is this ties into the fast decision makers. So you were saying like, I know, right? On a gut level, I'm in. So for those people, just across the board, for the faster decision makers, the thing I see missing from like any web page of copy, from any email being sent out to your list, from any social media post where you're asking them to take an action, people tend to bury the link or the button. Like they'll put it at the bottom of the email. They'll put it at the further down the sales page. After you scroll some, you finally see where you can take the action. Not for the fast decision makers. Have that button, that link, everything near the top, and have it again further down. That's another thing I see. It's like not just one link, like 3 links in one email, because think about it. People are scrolling on mobile. They don't want to have to scroll back up or down to take that action. But for the fast decision makers, they're going to click it right away. Don't make them look for it.
Right, right. So who is the fast decision maker? Lisa?
No. Oh, thank you for asking. That would be Bart. Bart is that impulsive, born leader, CEO of the world. This, he's just taken over. Like whatever's going on, he is leading the community. And so also with the Barts of the world, when they land on, let's just say, a web page and there's a button and they think they want to take the action because they already on a gut level know, the only thing that'll make them decide even faster is if you have a testimonial, like I said, right near that button of a name that they recognize. It's funny, I've talked to like Barts of the world. One person, I don't believe in competition, but he was like, oh yeah, if I see a testimonial of my competition, I'll buy it immediately. So it's that competitive personality.
Well, it's more than that, because I actually have a separate email that I opt into everything my competitors do so that I can keep myself different. So yes. I kind of spy on them in a sense.
Yes. See, these insights are so fun to hear because this is just all part of your decision-making process, right? So like you're interested in buying things that your quote unquote competitors would purchase, right? So keep those things in mind when you're putting your offers together or you're putting together like your book page or whatever it is. And then it doesn't always have to be competitors too. I just want to note, like, let's say I wanted to sell something to Oprah and her best friend is Iyanla Van Zant or Gail. Gail is like her well-known best friend. Just having like her best friend as a testimonial below the button is another thing, like another angle where they're like, oh yeah, I want that because Gail bought it. And that's my friend. Yeah. So I'm gonna grab it too.
We just had, I can never say her name. What was the first person you said there?
Iyanla Van Zant.
Yeah, she just endorsed one of our clients' books. So
Yay!
Yay.
Yeah, she's wonderful. And Lynn's done collaborations with her too. And it's just really special to be able to support each other in that way, right? And so that's another thing to think about. And this is more of a side note, like in terms of your testimonials, can you ask people who are well-known in your industry? It's just like getting them to write an endorsement for your book, right? Like, but also think about that for your testimonials. Don't just think about it for endorsements. Like you want to use that multiple places, not just the book. Right. And that brings me to our next decision maker. Are you ready for it?
Okay, who is it?
So let's go to Marge. She is the deep connection decision maker. Okay. So she is the type who she loves hearing your story. She is the one who, when she comes, if you have an offer available, like tell a story around what that offer has done to transform your own life. Like they really connect to you through story. They're very visual people. They love strong branded imagery. So that beautiful book cover is going to pull them in. And then also, besides stories, they like to bring their friends. So I don't know if you support, and I'm curious to hear, Juliet, like when folks are doing a book launch, do they invite their friends to like buy one, get one half off or any kind of like BOGO offers? They love stuff like that. Do you ever leverage that in campaigns? Do you see your community do that?
So we don't do that a lot because most of our people sell books through the distributors, so they don't have the ability, but more and more, and I know you don't know a whole lot about the book industry. The distributors get 55% of retail, which leaves the authors with little to no money from the book. So we are really encouraging doing offers like that on their website where there's a discount for the book, it's signed, they'll mail it out. And the difference there, you guys who are listening, is if someone buys a book from Amazon, you don't know who bought it. If
Right.
someone buys a book from you, if you can drive that traffic to your website and do an offer, like Sage just mentioned, now you have email address, name, phone number, you've got all of their details. So you have a better chance of bringing them in as a long-term audience member and hopefully convert them into a bigger sale later. So there's a lot of advantage to that.
Yeah, and there's so many directions you could go with that to appeal to the Marges of the world. So buy ones, I'll send one to your friend, right? Like, so really they're buying 2 books at once. I did a campaign with Carrie Green from Female Entrepreneur Association where it was a book bundle. Buy 10, give them to your mastermind, and you'll get this bonus from me, right? So if you have, and it really comes down to discerning who you have in your existing network to decide which strategy, because I'm going to throw one more out there, but you can kind of play with these different ideas. So another friend of mine, Lovia Jones, who did Professional Troublemaker book, she just released, she has a series now, she's serialized her books, and she just released basically Professional Troublemaker for Kids. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but what she did was so smart. She posts on her Instagram stories, because she has a lot of followers. She posts on there to, if you want to donate a classroom of books, right? So like 30 books to a classroom, contact me, I'll liaise on it, and we'll get the 30 books to whatever the classroom is. And I just love that. But it goes back to this appealing to the Marges, those deeper values, the deeper connection that really just lights them up to feel like they're a part of something bigger, right? Like they're the very conscientious type of person who would want to do those types of things. So these are all different strategies that you can play with for the Marges of the world, and they'll sell for you.
Yeah, and we actually had an author who wrote a fiction novel, actually quite scary. It was about AI and a female protagonist who went and stopped the AI. And it was actually something that could happen. That's what was so scary, because I read the book and I was like, could this really happen? And he's like, oh yeah, here's this video from Lockheed Martin where, the drones go in and kill people with AI. But what he did is he's really big on STEM. So he contacted computer science, data communities, and the companies bought books, and he came in and talked about women in STEM. He believes that women are better at cybersecurity than men because of our intuition. So it was a big seller, but same thing as the classroom. It's, he's going into corporate America and doing the same thing. Buy 100 books and I'll come out and speak on the topic.
I love that. Can you say the title and the author? I'm curious.
Chase Cunningham, and his book is, I have to show it to you because it's C:/Gabriel.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out. Chase Cunningham.
Gabriel's actually a system that a scientist created, AI driven, that he thought had died. He had killed the project, but apparently not.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's funny. I've never gotten up and gotten a book during an interview, but that's Chase.
That's how we roll over here. I'm just let's make it happen. All right. So let's go over the fourth and final decision maker. Do you feel like you identify with the Marges, the deep connection? Or I know you feel like you're a Bart and a little bit of Homer, but what about Marge? Do you feel like you have any of that?
Marge a little bit, because that's what I do when we promote the books, is a little bit about people's stories. I'm always really curious. I feel like Marges is curious as well. Like when I meet people, they probably feel like they're being interrogated because I'm curious. I want to know how you got to where you are. I want to know, I just want to know everything. So I'm really up to date, because men are like, I don't want to tell you. Like, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
I love it. Okay, so I love hearing that. All right, so let's go after through the fourth and final. This is the one that I identify with the most. So the Lisas of the world, they are the detail-oriented decision makers. They are slow to make decisions, but they're thorough. And it's funny because so let's say you have like a long form sales page for your offer. They are the type who will read the entire thing, because people often ask me, like, do I really need a long sales page for whatever offer I'm making? I'm like, well, it depends on your audience. If you have Lisas in there, the detail-oriented folks, you do need that longer sales page for them to want to make a decision. And so they will come and like read everything. And I used to get a little bit offended because I always am like, I do such a good job with my sales page, but they'll write me emails and start asking me questions. But that's the start of a sales conversation for them.
Right. And so interesting too, if you've ever looked at bank, those are the K people, which I do not resonate with. When I used to sell real estate, those are the people that are like the engineers, the technical people who would look at a real estate contract and they'd say, well, what if there's lightning and thunder and the grass behind my house catches on fire? And it's like, yeah, but the thing about those people though is when they do that, it annoys me. But those are the people you want to build your bridges and build your airplanes, and why is it not staying in the air? Why is it not collapsing? So but those are the people that just bother me.
It's the truth though, for the Reds, the Barts, and this is all kind of based loosely in DISC. It's my own version of it. And we use the Simpsons as the filter. So if anybody ever wants to take the DISC quiz, like they can go do that on their own time and figure out like what their results are. But it's so true that the Reds get annoyed by the Greens. So the Barts of the world get annoyed by the Lisas of the world because they feel like they have to slow down for them. And the Barts like to go fast. So they're like, can we move on? Like, I've got it next. So you just have to be mindful of that. So if you are the type of person who has a book that's meant for the CEOs, born leaders of the world, obviously you can pretty much ignore trying to market to the Lisas of the world if you don't want them buying your book, if there's nothing in the book for them specifically. And so, shorter sales pages are fine for the Barts of the world because they're never going to read the whole thing anyways. They're scanners. They just go for the top points and move on. So these are all things to consider, right? And the important part is to not assume that everyone makes decisions the same way you do, because that's just not true. And then to adjust your campaigns, whatever you're marketing, to that specific type of personality. And if I prefer having all four in my community because I like what each person brings, they each bring a unique flavor to my community. So I purposely appeal to all four when I'm writing a sales email, when I'm writing a sales page. There are certain offers I have, like I do private VIP days with clients. Those are meant for the Barts of the world. I will never create a long sales page for that because it's not necessary. They just need, they don't want a lot of hoops to jump through. They just need the payment link, and that's pretty much, and your calendar availability. That's all they want.
Yeah. But the other thing about that is those are the people who are, okay, I'm going to set aside time today. I'm going to sit here for 4 hours and I'm going to learn this. I feel like that they're the type two that will get into that rapid learning as well. But I want to point out too, you guys, this is just not about your sales page. You need to know this to target your language in your book to those particular buyers. We just sent an author back. He's signed up and ready to publish, but we sent him back to an editor because when I read the book, I was like, well, this is great, but it's like you're appealing to everyone, which means no one's going to buy it. So he's back refining some of that language so that it does hit. We went through and developed his target audience, and now he's going back and rewriting in that targeted fashion. Because there were people that just weren't going to. There's a whole span of people with that book that aren't going to pay attention to it anyway. So write it for the right people.
Yeah. And there's one other bridge too that I feel like you were saying, it's not just about the sales page, like book titles too, like saying who it's for in the subtitle is great if the book allows for that. And if the author is cool with it. Like, I don't know how many how-to books you have under your belt, but like whenever we're working on stuff like that, like always in the subtitle saying who specifically it's for. Right. So it's clear if it's not clear in the title already. who like professional troublemaker is like, if you consider yourself a troublemaker, that's for you, right?
Right.
So it's kind of, but even in her subtitle, I can't remember what it is. She like gets into the details of who it's really for. And I feel like that's missing from so many books.
It is. So the Author Success Handbook, mine is a step-by-step guide to building and leveraging your platform. So if you want to build your platform, this book is for you. So I agree.
So good.
I agree. I totally agree with that. So let's dive into something that I hadn't planned on touching on, but so many people are bringing me copy written by ChatGPT. And I just feel like you can glean some good words out of it, but I have to be honest, I do a lot of the copywriting for some of the book stuff. I have to be super uninspired to go use ChatGPT, like dragging, or like the inspiration is there. Have you experienced it all? I feel like it might say some of the right words, but it also feels soulless.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's part of it for sure. So here's my thing about ChatGPT. I've been using tools like that for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it spicy autocorrect.
Oh, that's so funny. What do you use specifically? Because I have one that I do like.
Well, right now I'm using Bard, which is a part of Google. I just stay in the Google suite because I love all their tools, just blanket. Back in the day, I used Spin Rewriter when I was like a blog writer and I would want to repurpose content. We would use something called Spin Rewriter. What are you using?
I was using Jasper, but it was very limited, and that I got rid of it because I was paying, I think, $100 a month, and I rarely used it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using Bard a little bit more. I'm part of an AI. I'm part of an AI group, and she makes us go back and forth between a couple different ones to see, what they can do. But I'm just kind of curious because I feel like if you take what you learned today and go use something like that, it might work. But if you don't have the basics of what you just taught us today, it's not going to be it's not going to be effective at all.
Yeah, 100%. So I agree that the words come out a little soulless. I also think you have to know what you want before you start using the tool. For me, because I've been a writer, a professional writer for the last 11 years in copywriting specifically, it would slow me down more than speed me up. And my version of coming up with concepts is just knowing how I process, which is by walking. So if I want ideas, like I go take a walk, but occasionally I'll pull up Bard and try to, like, if I can't think of, for a client, we were talking about them taking their leads from a trickle to overflow sales. And I was trying to come up with concepts around Australia and the fact that like a Great Barrier Reef filled with sales or something like that. Like I was trying to think of places like Niagara Falls in terms of Australia. And it helped me with that, right? Like I forgot about the Great Barrier Reef. So that's a specific example where it was helpful to like just put in like places like Niagara in Australia.
Interesting.
So yeah, so basic things, basic metaphors are really helpful because sometimes my brain just can't come up with the metaphor. But taking that metaphor and putting it into context to have it flow within the copy and knowing where to place that copy on the opt-in page, you can't replace me for that. Like
exactly.
Yeah. So like you were saying, you have to understand the basic foundations of the hierarchy of copywriting and marketing and or the framework of your book, right? Like coming up with a book plan. I don't think AI can come up with a plan, but it can fill in some of the ideas for you from there. But it won't be good and you're going to have to rewrite it. That's why I'm like, it's just spicy autocorrect. Like it can suggest a few things. And a lot of people are like, well, are you worried about it replacing your job? And I personally don't think it's moving. The technology it's always like, how trendy can the technology sustain? And so I don't think it's following a fast enough trend to replace some of the more technical skilled jobs that are out there. And that's just my take on it right now. The problem is I can't say if I know, like no one knows. We just have to wait and see. people can predict. It's just like the financial market. Like people can predict, but they may or may not be right.
Right. Right. That's so fascinating. I hike when I don't. When I just go, okay, I need to step away and I go out and hike. So same thing, walking.
Oh yeah. It's
So
special.
you have some, I think you have a free gift for us and then an offer, a $7 offer if people want to give what you have out there a try.
Yay. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me and for allowing me to share this with your community. The first thing I want to say before I get into the $7 offer is that I have a free gift. If you go to sagepolaris.com/we love Juliet, because we do.
I love that.
You can get your triple email open rates. So if you have an email list and you've ghosted them, it happens to the best of us. You can get 3 emails to copy, paste, and personalize to reappear in your potential readers' audience, reappear to your audience and get them excited about your next book offer or whatever you're creating next. If you have had a list for a long time, then I would say, when is the last time you scrubbed your list? These 3 emails will help you to re-engage with your audience, but then also make it clear that if they're not opening any of your emails, you're going to remove them, because you don't want to be paying for people to squat on your list. Like at least for me, I'm not on the free version of ConvertKit. So I'm paying for people to be there, and I only want people who are actually opening my stuff. It helps your deliverability to remove unengaged subscribers. There's just so many reasons to do it.
This is really important because if you're not connected to your readers, you're not connected. You're not. You have to be connected to your readers. So if they're on your list and they're just hanging out, I love the way you said that, squatting. It's time to evict them.
Goodbye, friends. We love you. And it just feels good to like know you're writing to people who actually want to hear from you, right? Like at the end of the day. So thank you for highlighting that. And for the folks who think they want to come into my membership, I do have a $7 2-week trial where you can get copy templates. You can get my eyes on your copy. I have a once per month copy hot seat. So if you're making offers, like doing any campaigns around your book, it would be, for some reason, we have a lot of authors and poets, and I didn't actively market to that community. And I'm so glad that they are there. This is probably like the first time I've actively talked to a community and been like, come over, authors. The copy template membership is available for that 2-week trial. If you go to sagepolaris.com/2-week, you can check out the offer. And then when you go to check out, here's the important part. To get that $7 trial, you need to put in publish 7. And if you put in publish 7 for 7 days from the airing of this podcast, you'll be able to take me up on that 2-week trial. So I'm very excited to have y'all come play over there if it interests you. I would love to support you in marketing all the different aspects. Like we talk about your website copy, your emails if you're sending them, your social media, like it gets into it, and I'm excited.
That's cool. So is it the number 2 week or 2TWO week?
The numeral 2. So sagepolaris.com/numeral 2 week. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Yeah. You guys, those will be in the show notes if you missed it there. So Sage, thank you so much for bringing the Simpsons back. I don't think are they still on? I used to watch the Halloween every year.
Can you believe it?
I'm more of a South Park girl now. The kids make me watch South Park, and
oh my goodness,
it's kind of funny that they're adults and they make me watch it.
That it must be the reruns. It's not airing, right?
I have no idea, but some of the stuff I watch is like the Apple one. I will remember that one forever. Have you ever watched that one?
No, I'm going to now. I have like a note of all the things I want to check out.
I'm going to crash it for you guys. It's that big disclosure every time you get an Apple product that nobody ever reads that you sign.
Yes.
Well, apparently somewhere in there it says that Apple is allowed to sew your mouth to somebody else's rear end. So there's this caravan of people that signed that Apple disclosure without reading. And full disclosure here, I have an Apple disclosure because we publish to Apple. Targets, Walmarts, everybody else was like 3 pages. Theirs was like 47 pages.
Wow.
For people to publish on there. It's kind of hilarious. So, okay, I spoiled the episode for you, but I think you'll laugh anyway.
Yes. It's so
Sage,
good.
thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me. Bye, everyone.